Nowadays, companies need to integrate an environmental dimension to their growth. In this section, we will look at two examples of companies and their relationship with the climate and the environment, the good student and the bad student. Sometimes, financial profitability and environmental awareness are antinomic for the companies. A telling example to illustrate this phenomenon is the Volkswagen scandal that broke in 2015, named the Dieselgate. Between 2009 and 2015, Volkswagen used several techniques to fraudulently reduce the greenhouse emission of some of its diesel and gasoline engines during homologation tests. They did this in order to avoid having the risk spent on research and construction and to be the first automaker in the clean diesel race that was going on at the time, and the expense of the damage their engines were doing to the environment. However, other companies integrate very favorable environmental dimension to their development and are very concerned by the environmental cause. They put, for example, very strong and committed CSR policies. This is, for example, the case of a large company such as Pernod Ricard, which aim at zero waste and landfill at 100% recyclable packaging, or the PSA Group builds cars with 30% recycled material. Companies can be encouraged to implement environmental policies for several reasons. Firstly, these good environmental behaviors are encouraged and sometimes even rewarded by governments, notably through financial rewards. On the other hand, consumer awareness has increased significantly in recent years, and customers expect companies to be committed to the environment. Therefore, a company that is concerned about the environment and the impact it can have on the fauna and flora can be communicating on this subject, attract new consumers, retain existing customers, and thus encourage its sales.
Recent analysis published by Oxfam undermine a misconception often encountered on the internet, that poor countries less technologically equipped pollute more than the rich countries. While it is true that the inhabitants of developing nations suffer more from pollution, the carbon footprint of the latter is not much for that of the richest in the world. As developed countries move toward greener industry, more electric vehicles, and more sustainable consumption partners, disadvantaged nations are still struggling to access the technologies and economic means to ensure a genuine transition. In North and Central Africa, as well as in South Asia, the situation is worrying, as the WHO found in 2016. In 2018, the organization Director General said, "Air pollution affects us all, but the poorest and most marginalized people pay the highest cost." In order not to worsen the climate situation, which is already catastrophic, it is not enough to change only our lifestyle. Obviously, the recommendation like consuming local and seasonal products. But we must see further than that. Indeed, we must see further than consume less while keeping our current comfort. We need to invest in technologies that reduce energy loss, such as improving the insulation of our home, producing cleaner, more sustainable and recyclable energy.
Now I will present the impacts of cities and urban areas on the environment through globalization. In 2020, urban areas represent 3% of the Earth's surface, but in 2050, 80% of the world population will be living there, and today they are already responsible for 72% of world greenhouse emissions. So here are the main impacts of the environment urbanization will cause. First, we have the air pollution, which is linked to the overcrowding. The increase of flows of people towards the city to find a job and have a better way of life has increased the population density. And regarding transportation, more people use their cars to go to work, and it causes long traffic jam, releasing a lot of carbon emissions. The air pollution has been causing 7 million premature deaths in 2018, according to the World Health Organization, making of it a great issue. Then there is a problem of sanitation facilities. For instance, in Paris, trash collection has become a serious issue over the last few years because of the increase of garbage due to a higher consumption of people, and the city is now struggling adapting its rubbish collection network to keep its streets clean. And finally, urbanization is responsible for the loss of green areas and biodiversity. Indeed, more people come to town, we need more buildings, places to accommodate these people, new schools, new companies, etc. Moreover, the use of concrete destroys nature and ecosystems, and by consequence, it threatens the species that live in.
When we talk about pollution and carbon emission, transportation usually come to our mind, and there is a reason. Depending on the studies, the pollution due to transportation vary between 25 and 30%. The globalization has connected our world more than ever, and therefore, people are moving more than in the past. Even during the first half of the 20th century, people were working very close to their home, while now, people are driving more often to go to work. In comparison, in 1950, only 2.1 million cars were registered in France. Nowadays, we're close to 40 million, and this number go up between 0.5 and 1% each year. A change began to happen with the electric cars, but it currently represents nothing compared to the 1.4 billion cars in the world. When we talk about transportation, not only cars are involved. Boats, trains and planes are also huge petrol users. There are two main elements to take into consideration: people transportation and freight transportation, which represent respectively 60 and 40% of the transportation CO2 emission. In fact, people are traveling more and more, and as everybody knows, giants like Amazon and Alibaba require a lot of transportation because people buy things from all over the world. This obviously means an increase of the transportation and therefore an increase of pollution.
Today, in our globalizing world, consumption is a key word. The best reflect of that hyperconsumption is fast fashion. 100 billion clothes are sold per year in the world. The production of all these clothes consumes a lot of water. The textile industry is the third largest consumer of water in the world. It uses 4% of the drinking water available in the world. Did you know that it takes 2,700 liters of water to make a single cotton t-shirt? The fast fashion industry also contributes 5% of greenhouse gas emissions emitted each year. Traditionally, the fast fashion industry produced two collections, one winter and one summer, but today fashion has become so consumable that there are mid-season collections. However, now cotton is out. The new fashion material is polyester because costs less, but third time more energy consumer because it needs petrol extraction for its production. It is impossible to deny or to avoid it. Fast fashion and fashion industry is clearly responsible of the climate awareness. Transport related to imports to make the journey from the factory to the store generate much higher pollution than one might imagine. Carbon footprint is estimated around 1.2 billion of tons of CO2. It represents 2% of greenhouse gas emissions emitted in the world. Did you know that a jean can travel until 65,000 kilometers to gain his final destination? Privileged, reasonable and durable production, while privileged workshop and factory next to the place of commercialization can be a solution. Favorize label and certification of recycled materials. Why not buy second-hand clothes either? The idea is to consume less, while wearing more clothes to avoid unnecessary purchase.
Another important consequence of globalization is intensive agriculture. Indeed, to meet the food needs of a growing population plagued by overconsumption, farmers have had to implement new industrial processes to increase productivity. Agriculture then gradually became intensive agriculture, aiming to increase yields per unit of labor and per hectare. To achieve this, it had to improve not only the performance of the soil, but also that of the plants and animals through various methods of technological and scientific innovation. The problem is that these methods consist of the excessive use of chemical fertilizer, pesticides and other heavy machinery, which in the long run cause many environmental problems. These problems include water and soil pollution, the disappearance of insects useful to the ecosystem, poor living conditions and hygiene for livestock, and contamination of foodstuffs consumed by humans affecting their health. But perhaps one of the biggest problems resulting from intensive agriculture is deforestation. The felling of trees in large numbers, burning systems and the clearing of forest areas in order to create as much space as possible for agriculture, have led to massive deforestation, heavily impacting biodiversity, weakening soils, and accentuating global warming. Although the latter is often forgotten, it is one of the major consequences of deforestation, since destroying trees also destroys their capacity to absorb CO2, which causes a greater greenhouse effect. Thus, deforestation is one of the biggest factors in global warming in the world today.